a lot of it is instinctual. You develop an instinct for knowing what's a priority and what's not. So it really is about going with what's most urgent, what's the biggest bang for your buck. Well, the fear factor is there. So it's the fear and just the anxiety is there. And it's not normal. Our central nervous system is not made to constantly be on edge and to feel like everything is an emergency. Change is uncomfortable.
Right.
And that's okay.
Right.
That's okay. Like, life is supposed to be uncomfortable. I don't know who sold us
the
story that there's not supposed to be bumps along the way, but parents should prepare their kids to say, life is not a linear thing. It is about challenges. You're going to fall down. You're going to get your ass kicked. You're going to get back up.
Yeah.
Right.
And don't be scared of that. Like, actually expect it.
Hi, and welcome to the Living Richly podcast. It's so great to have you back. Welcome you back to the Living Richly Nation. Really excited about this week's show. We have Sophie Parisien, a great friend and client of ours. Welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Sophie, you're like a seasoned business leader. I've told you this. I've told your team this. And I've told my team this, that you're probably one of the most sophisticated leaders that I've had the opportunity to work with over the years. And you've quite an amazing work history and career. Started in healthcare, running an emergency department.
Wow.
We often talk about like leaders were not saving lives. Yeah. You actually were in many ways, right?
Me personally, but
and now are running a local law firm, great law firm, Sikat Gidbo, that I have the privilege of serving as well. Over and over in my work with your team, they talk about the impact of your leadership on their lives and the influence that you've had on them. And of course, also a wife, mother of 3 teenagers, including twins, right?
Yes,
I mean, an amazing background. And I can't wait to get into this conversation with you. And so let's jump right in.
Sure.
As a seasoned leader, I'm fascinated by the question or your answer to this question. What does leadership mean to you?
That's a big question.
It's a big question.
It means different things at different times, of course. But to me, leadership is not management. It's got nothing to do with it. It's really just being there for the team and for people to be able to unfold into their best self and really kind of setting the stage so that people can reach their goals and can really be the best versions of themselves. So I'm really, I believe in servant leadership, so being there for them and really kind of setting things up for them. Sure, challenging as well, because some people are, have fears, and I don't know why some people are, well, there's a lot of people that are very afraid. It's kind of our society right now. So kind of taking away some of the fears and helping people be courageous and trying new things, I think, is what I see leadership being.
Yeah, I love that. I love the servant leadership lens. I know that that's who you are, and the empowering other people. It's very different than the style of leadership that we see in a lot of the business world, where it's more top down.
Yeah, 100%. I'm curious because Eric's talked about you a lot in a very positive light. So I'm super excited to have you here. But I'm really curious to know a bit of your journey around sort of what led you into, healthcare, and then sort of what transitioned you into law. Pretty different spectrums.
Yeah. Well, I will probably get into, my early years kind of thing, but I was born and raised in Ottawa. Went to French schools, and so French Catholic and French Canadian family. Not very religious. So when I say Catholic, my parents weren't, but they came from an upbringing.
Right.
It's cultural, right?
It is cultural, yeah. And they divorced when I was age 7. So we'll talk about a little bit about that impact a bit later. But just generally, when I graduated in grade 13, we had to do grade 13 in those days.
Yeah, I remember.
All of my friends were kind of going to university and just doing a BA or doing something, and they'd figure it out later. Yeah. Obviously, my parents being divorced, I didn't have the luxury of, obviously, what it's like to be a single parent and have to pay for your own house and everything else. So, I had to pay my own way to university. So I thought, I'll take a year off and I'll figure out what I want to do. I have no idea what I want to do. Yeah. And during that time, I got sick. I was traveling and got sick, came back, was hospitalized with a severe kidney infection, double kidney infection for a couple of weeks. And I was 20, I believe by then, 19 or 20, and was in the hospital for 2 weeks, sharing a room with 3 other patients at a time when healthcare was, the way it was kind of thing. And to say I had the best patient experience would be a lie. I felt very powerless in my own. And it was kind of the first time in my life where I was like, hello, I'm a human being, like, and, the doctors and the teams and the residents would come and talk down to you kind of thing.
Wow.
And funny story is one time there was visitors. I would get visitors, and one guy I was dating at Red Lobster at the time. Yeah. He came to visit me, and
the best bread ever at Red Lobster.
Yeah, I love Red Lobster. A lot of my friends. I have my Red Lobster crew. Hey, crew, this is awesome. And but
Red Lobster, if you'd like to sponsor the show, we're wide open.
Yeah. Still love Red Lobster. Never got sick of it. Worked there for 8 years. But he was visiting me, and the nurse came in at the end of her shift. She said, "Hey, sweetie," in front of him. "Oh, hi. It's 3:30. I just need to know, have you had a bowel movement today?" In front of, I'm 20. And she's like, "I need it for my chart." And I'm like, oh God, like mortified. I turned all red. I'm like, yeah, I did. Yeah. And then she's like, "Was it solid or was it soft?" And I was like, "Are you effing kidding me right now?" Like, and so anyway, I went to bed that night going, I'm going to go into nursing, and I'm not going to treat people like that. I'm going to treat them as where they're at and meet them where they're at and try and tweak things. Of course, we have processes to follow. Yeah. So I knew fairly quickly that I wanted to go into nursing, yes, to help people.
Yeah. And to make a difference.
To make a difference at a one-off, but more at a macro level as well. I wanted to kind of change some ways, some old-fashioned ways.
I absolutely love that, because we just recently had on the show Nazim Ahmed, who's a great friend, client as well. He's in the tech space, right? And is working on a second startup. And we had Steve Cody, who's a serial entrepreneur here locally, Cody Party. There's so many businesses that he's launched here locally. And what was fascinating, two very different stories, but very similar to what you just said.
Really?
They found themselves in a situation where they saw a need. Yeah. They saw a gaping hole in the system or something not being addressed. And that's what, and I think in essence, that's what leadership is. I think a lot of folks see the same issues and just turn a blind eye, or I guess it's just the way it is.
It's true.
But leadership often is, how do I change it? I didn't know that about your story.
100%. It's funny because we do that all the time. We're probably the worst. We were just away at Wakefield for a nice relaxing weekend.
It was.
And we're waiting at a restaurant to get in, and we're like, God, it's so inefficient. But constantly, like, they just did this, and you
can't turn it off once you see it. Once you see it. My parents
100%.
Raised me like that. It was always a no negative talk kind of thing in the house, internal dialogue, don't talk to yourself badly kind of thing. But also, don't just complain and not do anything.
Yeah.
If 100%. You're not going to do anything about it, then shut up.
Yeah.
Don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, do something about it.
Right.
So it was kind of innate in me. My parents both have strong leadership capabilities, and both my brother and I are like that too. We just see change, and it's like, and when you turn it on, honestly, you can't turn it off. Like, you really can't see inefficiencies in the lineups at Tim Hortons.
100%.
Right.
Kind of things. You just can't.
Yeah, that's part of the curse of being a business coach is for me is, and a leadership coach.
I want to go there and fix it. Do you know how many
I can help you.
Yeah. I literally had to tell my husband a few years ago, because I do the finances and other stuff, but I said, I am not talking to Rogers or Bell ever again in my entire life. Because unless I become their CEO and go and change the way they do things, I can't spend any more minutes of my life.
Well, there's maybe a future career path for you. So you chose healthcare, right? And talk to us about that. I mean, you would end up eventually, before you made the shift that landed you where you are now, you were running an emergency department, which I can only imagine.
That was only part of my, that was only for 4 years. I was in healthcare for 25 years.
Oh, wow.
And if there's parents out there that are not sure what their kids want to do, or themselves, if there's people out there that aren't sure, healthcare is a wonderful field. What's good about nursing specifically is it's very versatile. So you get bored with one field, you switch to another. And I'm the kind of person that likes to experience different things, and you still have your degree there. And so I did a lot of things. I started, beginning of life, labor and delivery was where I did my first few years.
Wow.
Loved that. It was amazing. And then I was a manager for palliative care. Saw people at the end of life as well. Worked in cancer care, worked in many different chronic.
So, I mean, I have to, I don't want to interrupt you, but
no.
So being there when life begins, and being there when life ends.
Privilege. It's a
privilege. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I've been there when my kids were born, and I remember all three of them.
Yeah.
I was present during their birth and cried like a baby all 3 times because it's so overwhelming. And I've been at people's bedside as they're transitioning in my former life. And I love that privilege, honor.
100%.
Right?
Yeah. People are at their most vulnerable during those times.
Yeah.
So it's you get to see the true essence of human beings. And that's my passion is figuring out what make people tick and who they are and their story. And so when you're in that vulnerable state, pain or just lovely kind of moments, you kind of, all this fluff goes away. So healthcare is like that. You just, every single day you get perspective on life and death, and life is too short. And so I don't need reminders of that ever. It's just always there to know that there's people that are worse off than you. There's people that are going through the worst day of their life kind of thing. And I might be at work, and to me, I've done this 10,000 times. I don't know how many times I told my nurses this in the emergency department, because sometimes I'd get complaints in my job as director there. Yeah. And they, they'd see 150, 200 patients a day. And for them, it was like triage, and they do the typical asking the questions. And yes, they know that there are people sicker than that person. Sure. Yeah. But that person is their first time, and it may be the worst day in their life. And so they have to have an experience that somebody's listening to them and's got them.
Wow. So what's like making decisions like in, like Eric said it at the beginning where, I'm in marketing. And so we always would say like, if we don't hit our deadline, no one's going to die. And it's a common, and it's
I
horrible.
Use it a lot too.
Right.
It's this life or death. Are you bleeding or on fire?
Okay. Yeah. So we're good.
Are you bleeding or on fire? Oh my God.
Allow it.
I'm stealing that one.
Yeah. Sure. But that's the reality, is that's not the case. But for you in that role, maybe walk us through, what does decision making look like in that setting? Because I imagine the pressure there is intense.
Yeah, and healthcare generally, healthcare professionals are under a huge amount of stress, particularly doctors and nurses, but also other healthcare professionals that are in that field. And so a lot of it is instinctual. You develop an instinct for knowing what's a priority and what's not. Triage is the term the emergency department uses, obviously, but you use that in many aspects of healthcare. So it really is about going with what's most urgent, what's the biggest bang for your buck, not in marketing necessarily, but how many people am I going to impact, or what is this decision going to get, what domino effects is it going to have? If I do this one thing for this one patient, what impact will it have to all the others, or vice versa? If I don't act now on this, what message am I giving to the team or to other patients? Right. So it's a lot about, thinking quickly, prioritizing what's got the most value, the highest reward, the lowest risk. Obviously, mitigating risks is a really big part of the job for any leaders, but particularly risks in healthcare are like life or death. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes.
For 100%. And overwhelm, we talk about overwhelm. So many people struggle with living life in a state of almost constant overwhelmed, feeling overwhelmed with life, the decisions that need to be made, the responsibilities. And you talked about the triage thing. I think very few people know or have developed the skill to triage. So everything feels
100%.
Everything feels like an emergency.
Everything feels like an emergency, and everything feels like it deserves 100% of our energy, time, and resource. Right? How do you we were talking earlier, just in getting ready for the show. You talk, well, for me, leadership in life, in business, it's the same, right? So can you talk to us about what triaging in life looks like for you?
I think it's just about, I don't know if you've heard of the book, The Subtle Art of Giving a Fuck.
Yeah.
That kind of, when I read it, it kind of summarized how I think and feel. I was like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's only so many things you can care about. And it's not that, and just for those who haven't read it, it's not about not actually giving a fuck. It's about choosing the fucks you're going to give.
So
a cup full of it, I think there's a cup that actually exists. That says,
I'm sure.
About, that you're overloading my cup of fucks.
We need to get them for the show.
But just the concept is just simply choose what really matters to you, aligned with your values, and really own those and give a fuck about those.
Right.
But let go of the other stuff. Like, you can't have a strong opinion on everything. I get many people sometimes ask me, like, what do you think of this? I don't know. I don't have an opinion on that. Yeah. It's not one of those things that I care about that much. Tell me more about it. I'm open, And so sometimes when people come in and I'm like, I'm coming to my office or whatever, and it's like, okay, let's just take a moment here. Is it life or death? Is anybody going to die?
Are you bleeding or on fire?
At the law firm, it's only money. Like, it's not even real money. It's like wires and stuff like that, so let's just deal with this. And then sometimes that puts things in perspective. Wow. But oftentimes there's things behind that. Like, we live in a life right now, our journey right now together, where the constant well, the fear factor is there.
It's
So the
high.
fear and just the anxiety is there, and it's not normal. Our central nervous system is not made to constantly be on edge and to feel like everything is an emergency,
Fight or flight,
to be completely always bombarded with things like with digital, aspects of it. So it's just really about perspective, putting people and going, okay, we can get this done. I have a sign in my office that says, and my kids know this about me, everything is figure outable.
Yeah. I love
that.
Literally everything
that.
is figure outable.
And I love just being able to say, I don't have an opinion on that. I love that because there's times where you're just like, you can give one, but you really don't have one. So taking
Why
that.
am I going to make it up?
Right. Exactly. I'm just being like, I don't have one.
But don't we feel that pressure though? Let's face it, right? As leadership, as parents, as spouses, whatever, we feel this pressure to always have an answer or an opinion on everything. Yeah. And I think it's learning to, again, when we talk about how many fucks do I have to give, sometimes it's okay to say, I actually don't have a formed opinion on this just yet.
And I don't need to.
Yeah.
I want to circle back because we kind of we started healthcare. We kind of skipped over what brought you into law, and I'm super curious about this one. So,
opportunity, really.
Yeah.
I worked in healthcare, like I said, for 25 years.
Yep.
It's a wonderful field, but in Canada, as you know, healthcare is attached to the provincial political system. So that's who controls the bucks.
Yeah.
And every 4 years, there's an election. And every 4 years, it flips. And the party in power wants to make their stamp on things. So they switch things up, which is really not helpful for healthcare providers so it was really, I was getting very tired of putting a lot of energy into developing things that were meaningful to patients and to doctors and nurses that needed it. And then, all of a sudden the flip of government said, oh, no, we're taking money away from that. Yeah. So it's exhausting when you know where you want to go, but you're stuck in red tape.
Yeah.
Right,
so a headhunter called me and one of your clients.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, they're creating a position as COO in a law firm. I'm like, I'm a nurse, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I had to say that 3 or 4 times in the conversation.
Yeah,
you know I'm a nurse. I go, they particularly do not want a lawyer leading. They want someone with leadership experience. They want to do financial management, HR, those kind of things.
Yeah.
And healthcare is very similar to the legal field. You don't think about it at first, but people go to a lawyer when they're in a vulnerable state. When they're getting divorced, you're buying a house that could be good or bad kind of thing.
Yeah.
You're selling your business, you're suing someone. There's a bunch of different things. You're developing your will. So you're talking about death. So there's a lot of life and death and marriage. And it's very similar in that aspect. So it took me a while to make the decision. I analyzed a lot, talked to my family and friends about it, weighed all the pros and cons. That's the way my brain works, right? Wrote them down. And then took the opportunity.
Wow.
So after you triaged that decision and weighed the pros and cons and jumped in, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced in the transition and how did you overcome them?
I think I was prepared for them in advance. I'm just not being a content expert about the legal field,
Right.
But I don't believe leaders need to know the subject. I'll say it helps later. Like I've been there for 4 or 5 years now. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But so I've become more familiar with it. But certainly that's a discomfort. But I like being uncomfortable. I need that in my life. I need a bit of discomfort once in a while to grow. And so I was ready for it. You have to find your people to know who are the content experts and who am I going to go to. So I spent my first week there meeting with everybody one-on-one and just asking questions and listening. And so that really helped. But definitely, I'm not going to lie, it's uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable.
Right.
And that's okay.
Right.
That's okay. Like life is supposed to be uncomfortable. I don't know who sold us the story that there's not supposed to be bumps along the way. But parents should prepare their kids to say life is not a linear thing. It is about challenges. You're going to fall down. You're going to get your ass kicked. You're going to get back up.
Yeah.
Right.
And don't be scared of that. Like actually expect it.
Well, exactly. So, because you spoke of parenthood, I'm curious, like for you, how does your leadership style, like we talked about how personal and business are all one, but you know, parenting and leading, they are For you, they're all the same. For me, so talk to me about that.
Sometimes I call
I need
adult daycare, and they know I'm joking, but
Yeah.
Adult daycare.
Yeah.
So many great one-liners. I got, are you on fire or what is it? Are you
burning or bleeding? Bleeding or on fire.
Bleeding or on fire. And now adult daycare.
Yeah.
Great definition.
Because I've had a patient come in on fire. So
Okay,
that really happens.
that'll be another
bleeding is a
podcast. We'll have you
constant,
back.
obviously. But it's the same. It's about supporting each other. It's about setting the stage for people and not imposing yourself on other people, but letting them like literally unfold into who they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
We all come with our own like stamp of who we are, our own temperament, our own. It's not my job as a parent to mold my child to my way based on my experience and what I want them to be. It's to make them be the best versions of themselves.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the exact same thing that I do with my employees. Is, who are they? Let me figure them out. Being curious about what's in there, giving them permission to trust themselves, to screw up, to fall and get back up, and to, we do that in skating with kids. You're going to fall down, get back up. I'm never skating again.
Yeah.
I remember one of my twins saying that and me laughing in the background going, you're going to get up again. And, she laughs about that now. But it's the same thing with everything is if you don't give them permission to be who they are, they're going to feel like so there's this kind of perception of parents and of leadership that's not necessarily a school of thought that I believe in, which is kind of the hierarchy of I'm the parent, you're the child, or I'm the leader and you're the employee. To me, it's more flat. We're just people meeting together. We all have a different role. And yes, you have to guide kids when they're little. But after a while, you need to step back.
Otherwise they don't develop.
Exactly.
Right? So I love that because again, I think there's a lot of leaders. And again, I've been doing this a long time. I've worked with now thousands of leaders in hundreds of organizations. And one of the biggest challenges for a leader is when they reach a stage when you're working with a younger leader or a less experienced employee. Of course, they're going to need more help. It's like when your child is younger and needs
100%.
direction, guidance, support.
You need to feed them and dress them, and
where a lot of leaders struggle, where a lot of parents struggle, is when that little one or that employee is coming into their own. A leader feels insecure about that, can feel all kinds of things about that, and try to impose it's supposed to look like this, or try to live vicariously through their kids. But what I hear you saying is that it's all about figuring out who they are.
It makes me so happy once they figure it out. And once they figure it out, I step back.
Yeah.
It's like I now know you can do it, and you're going to do it.
Yeah.
A, it's going to make my life a lot easier because I'm delegating. Stuff. B, I got other stuff to do.
Right.
And how are you going to get better at it if you don't do it?
Yeah.
Because I can do it. It shouldn't. Yes, it takes more time to coach someone. Yes, it takes more time
100%
to pass the information through, whether it's at work or with parents. But it's totally worth it. Everybody wants to grow and become good at something, and staying flat and not allowing people to grow in the workplace is why people leave.
Yeah.
Right.
I love your approach. I think for me in that workspace, I'm good. Like, I'm really happy. Like when I see someone on my team thrive, I am like, that's my happiest moment. And go fly with my kids. I'm a little like, I'm not like, my son right now is away in New York City. It's his first road trip with his friends. He's flying home on his own.
16.
And I'm like, why is he not texting me? Like, I am very like,
normal.
There's still the mom. Yet he's there. Yeah. And so,
but you're practicing it.
Exactly.
Right? You're aware of it.
Yeah.
You're practicing it. Like
exactly.
to me, like we talk about practicing law or practicing medicine or practicing yoga.
Yeah.
Well, it's like practicing life.
Yeah.
Like we're practicing it. We're not going to get it right the first time.
No.
You haven't been a mother of a 16-year-old that's going on a trip the first time before.
And he's my oldest. So
how are you supposed to know how to do it?
Yeah.
Right. So you're going to screw up and you're not going to get it right. And if you overstep and goes, Mom, then you just apologize, and repair and whatever. So
Totally.
It's a journey.
It's not life or death. Nobody's going to die. He's not.
Nobody's on fire. Yet.
Yeah. That's my fear.
That's my fear. Yeah.
I know, because of course we go there. I sent memes to my kids. Like, I think I heard somebody talk about this on the podcast. When they don't answer their phone, this is what I'm imagining. And it's that meme of them on the side of the road dying or whatever.
It is. They're literally.
That was you.
It was me. It was me. Yeah.
It's me too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I've talked myself through it, self-talk.
100%. Okay.
Don't be ridiculous.
But I think I'm reminded of the saying, when it comes to anything in life, when it comes to becoming your best self, succeeding in your career, whether it's getting healthy and making some changes, get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Like you have to embrace the discomfort.
And don't be so afraid. Be courageous. Like, be brave. There's no reason not to be. Honestly, what's the worst that can happen?
Right.
Like I always go to, okay, what's the worst that can happen?
Right.
Hey, I'm not going to get the job. I'll get fired, or, I'll hurt myself.
Right.
Whatever.
Yeah.
It's still not a failure. It's a learning opportunity to go, okay, that wasn't for me.
Yeah.
Get back up and just move forward.
Keep
Yeah.
going.
As long as there's movement forward and you're kind of progressing in life,
Yeah.
then, to me, that's living richly.
Yeah,
I
Brene
love
Brown
that.
talks about.
She does talk
She
about
says
that.
something about you can either choose comfort or you can choose courage, but you can't have both.
Yeah.
And she said choose courage, right?
Always.
Choose courage. People are so afraid, and I think I'm interesting to see your lens on this. You led your team through COVID.
Yeah.
And that was a trying time for a lot of organizations. And I have found that on the other side of COVID, there is a timidity, a fear, a hesitation in people.
100%.
People seem more fragile now than at any time that I can remember. I don't know if that's been your experience and how you're addressing that, or.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense when you think about it. We were placed in a state of fear for, years. Like literally you could kill your grandparents if you were sick around them. That's a lot to put on children, anybody, not anybody. So you could see how that state of constant, alertness, and the crash afterwards. So there's like a crash afterwards. So yeah, I've seen a lot of mental health and anxiety and burnouts, and people just kind of, were kind of holding it in for a while, and then they just couldn't anymore.
Yeah.
And I think just normalizing that, talking about it, and just acknowledging the fact that, it's okay and you'll get through it, kind of thing. And just giving people the tools to do that as well, and self-care and everything that goes along with it. And if people need to change, whether it's jobs or patterns in their life, then they should, so just talking about it. A lot of my job is talking in my office.
Creating that space, right?
Yeah,
it's a big, this is a big part of what prompted us to do this show. Now, here we are now, 63 episodes in. We just celebrated our first anniversary on December 27th of the show. Thank you. It's creating a safe space to talk about difficult issues, and giving people tools and resources to actually address it, right? Which is what you're doing day to day. I would imagine both at home with your kids and your family and in the workplace.
Yeah. And I know, like, for me in COVID, you talked about nervous system. I think like everyone was we're all just vibrating, right? And now we're starting to come down. And I think the come down is even harder. I think people are a bit lost, confused. Yeah. Do I have to go work 9 to 5 in an office? Can I work remotely? I want to go be on a beach 24/7.
Do I need to test myself?
Right?
Do I wear a mask? Do I go in? Do I stay home?
What do I, right. Yeah. So that it's up here. So self-care is so important. We talk a lot about it on the podcast. We actually our previous episode was on self-reflection. From your perspective, how important is that for you in your life, and what does it look like? Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to be who I am without it, for sure.
Yeah.
It looks different in different at times of my life, I think.
Yeah.
It really does. Sometimes it's just time to myself and 2 minutes of silence or whatever, or whatever works for me at the time, exercise. But generally self-care for me is doing, and I really acknowledge my parents for giving me this permission when I was young. Don't do what you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Do more of what you want to do.
That's amazing.
I think a lot of people waste a lot of their energy on doing things for other people that they don't want to do, or doing things because of obligation. Don't do it.
Yeah.
And I tell my kids, blame it on me. Tell them you don't want me doing it, because they're like, oh, I really don't feel like doing that. Well, then don't do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Because that drains us a lot of times. And I think you've talked about it on the podcast. Sometimes when we feel drained or tired, or we feel like our battery is low, it's because we're not doing enough of the stuff that juices us, that excites us.
Yeah.
So,
100%.
And honestly, if you're in a bad mood, doing something for someone else puts you in a good mood. So me, even going to work or talking to my kids and doing something for them, and just a little act of kindness will help. That fills my cup too. But sometimes I just need to not talk to people for 2 days.
I'm
Yoga,
I'm out of fucks.
Yeah. And I have awesome friends who know me and who understand that if I say, nope, I don't feel like going to the concert, they know it's because I don't need that in my life right now. And what I need is either something else or whatever. And they don't judge me for it. And I don't Like another thing I think we have is that FOMO, fear of missing out.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my friends are going to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what do you need right now?
Yeah.
And if I need to go to the gym or self-care also to me is pushing myself to do more, like learning. Like during COVID, I learned how to play golf and pickleball and afterwards and stuff like that, and did more cycling. And so pushing yourself outside your comfort zone, I think, again, is contagious. The more you do it, you can't stop doing it.
Right.
So sometimes people have that fear and I see them being held and I'm like, just try it. Like, you don't have to commit to it for life. Just try it.
Yeah, I talk about this actually with with my leaders all the time, because I remember at a younger stage, I've talked about my journey. I've talked about like it took me 3 burnouts to slow learner sometimes, right? It takes me a while.
You say that, but you're not a
well, sometimes on some fronts I feel like I am, because it took me a while. But people would keep telling me, Deschamps, get a hobby. Like, you need to get a hobby. Like, you have to. And I was a much younger leader. I was way too invested just in work. I wasn't investing enough in other areas of my life. But I remember every time if I was at a place, if one more person tells me to get a hobby, I'm going to murder them. Like, I'm gonna, right? Because I felt that I needed to figure out what that hobby would be and almost commit to it. And like everything else in my life, then give 100% to it.
Perfectly.
Do it perfectly. It's like I'm getting married before I even started dating.
Yeah.
And so now when I'm working with my leaders, I'll encourage them to say, you do need to have some meaning outside of work, because if that's the only way you define yourself, that's not healthy.
Absolutely.
Right? You need to have some pursuits that really fill your cup outside of that. But don't feel like you need to commit to anything.
Exactly.
Just experiment, try different things,
Yeah.
right? Try pickleball, try learning golf.
Even if you suck,
Even if you suck,
I mean,
we're
talking about sports, but just generally, that perfectionism is dangerous. I've always I aim for excellence is what I aim for. 90% is good enough.
Yeah, I've seen that.
I don't
time
need
and time again in your
100%.
leadership.
I do not. I will. That 10% will kill me. I like it. I mean, I know what perfection looks like, but I will always be okay with excellence. And I want, that's why I tell my kids or my staff is it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
We will never get it perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you have to, and excellent is good enough. 90% is good enough.
Yeah.
So good. Perfectionism and people pleasing, I think, are 2 very destructive forces.
People
Super
doing
common.
and I don't know where that comes from. Maybe some of it is upbringing, but just doing, feeling like we're having to please other people and not realizing this is our journey. Like, this is our journey. We're only here.
Yeah.
And again, healthcare helps me with that, knowing that there's a beginning, there's an end.
Yeah.
And your journey is yours. It's not like my kid's journey is not mine.
Right.
It's theirs. And you have to do stuff with it, otherwise you just exist.
It's-
and I can tell you people that I've seen on their deathbed, we talk about that.
Yeah.
A lot of them, that was the regret. And I wish I would have done more. I wish I would have tried more things. I wish I wouldn't have worked at the same job for 30 years for my pension. I remembered that when I was looking at leaving healthcare. I was like, do I stay at my job for my pension? Hell no.
Right. Right.
No.
But it's amazing how many people do.
Yeah.
If you don't, if you love your job, great. But if you need a change and you know it instinctively.
But that's it. But the amount of people that stay stuck because they feel, the golden handcuffs, we hear it all the time, but feel stuck because of something like that. And you and I have talked, and you've talked about so many of those conversations at end of life where people's regrets aren't, it's never about stuff or money or things. It's about people I wish I had taken more risks, or jumped out of that plane. I wish I spent more time with the people I love. And that's really, when you get present to that today, not at the end, is when you can start truly living that life.
Yeah. Well, it was Henry David Thoreau who said, most people, I would change it nowadays. Most people go to the grave with the song still in them. Right. They never live up to their full potential. I can't write
a song, but my husband is a songwriter and he writes beautiful songs and I cannot.
Right. But I never heard at someone's deathbed, I wish I would have worked harder.
No.
Yeah.
I never heard those words.
No.
Right.
It depends what their work is, right?
Yeah.
Some people's work, like healthcare, I do find it, or people that are in helping professions, legal as well. If you're connecting with people, it's very similar to what those people are saying. Is I wish I connected with my loved ones.
Schindler's List.
Yeah.
At the very end, if I had sold my car, I could have saved so many more.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I think in that context, I think when you're right, when your work. When you're blessed to be in a line of work that feels like a mission and a cause, right? But very few people.
Yeah, it's
have
very.
that, right?
So they have but I wouldn't want the message to be if you don't have a close family or loved ones and you work in tech, for example, and you're working with computers all day, and not to say there's not people on the other end, but you know what I mean? It's not that there's not ways to other ways to connect, you know, it doesn't. So as long as you find those ways, because that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
We're, you know, we focus a lot on doing, but we're not human doings. We're human beings, you know, so being in the moment and being with people and connecting with people, it's fascinating and it's awesome. Like how different we all are, but how alike we are. Yeah. It's super cool. I love it.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah.
You're a mother of 3 teenage girls.
We're not teenagers anymore.
Or not teen. That's right. You've got twins.
Well, I guess 18 is still, they're going to be 19.
Technically, right? So they're
and a 23-year-old.
And a 23-year-old.
Yeah.
What, when you think of your life philosophy, your leadership lens on the world, clearly you had some great lessons passed on to you from your parents, that have led to who you are today. What are like if there were 1 or 2 things that above all else you want to make sure you impart to them, what would those be?
Well, just because I don't want to forget the parts about my parents, I want to give you 2 a gift because it's a verbal gift, but still. My parents got divorced when I was 7 years old, and they got married really young. My mom was 19, my dad was 24. My dad was at the seminary, my mom was at a convent. It was like, I want to get out of the house. I don't want to go back to kind of thing. And, you know, they grew together for a while and then were married for 10 years and divorced. So I can honestly say that their divorce was the best thing that happened to me. So do not feel guilty. I hear you guys sometimes on the podcast and I have regrets and I have those kind of things. Yeah. Honest to goodness, I wouldn't be the person I am today without the divorce.
I love that.
Because, and they, you know, it started hard. It started hard, but that's what developed this whole resilience is of falling down and getting back up, seeing them do it, you know, having set in the stage for seeing them go into a deep depression and me having to support them, but also seeing them get back up and me going, wow, good for you, kind of thing. And just, and living their true life and saying, you know, this didn't work, but it doesn't mean other things can't work.
Right.
So that defined me. And I think, you know, I think it was Dr. Phil who said kids would rather be from a broken home than to live in a broken home. Yeah. It's very true. You know, like if you don't see your parents happy, I've had friends who's like, I was one of the only ones whose parents were divorced when I was young because it wasn't a thing
as
then.
Common.
In the 70s, you know? So I've always felt kind of outside and I would watch other families, but we had our own dynamics separately. We had our own, I developed my own relationship with my mom and with my dad, and my brother and I got a lot closer and I took care of him. So, you know, the whole, and yes, it helped develop mediation in me and compassion in seeing my parents go through really rough times at the beginning. Yeah. But honestly, it's what I hope my kids see as well is that we will go through we'll crash, like we'll get our ass kicked, get back up. It's not, it doesn't mean the end, you know, it's not the end of the world. That expression really is there for a reason. Yeah. Human beings, what I've seen in healthcare and in my job there too, but just generally with people, we're really tough. Like we can handle a lot. The things I've seen in healthcare of what people can handle and still thrive, like not just survive, but like thrive. Yeah. So, you know, I think that's the messaging is just try different things, push yourself a little bit. Don't get stuck in the comfort.
You're stronger than you think. Don't do things for, don't do things, be courageous. You are stronger than you think. Don't overthink. I think this generation is because of, I don't know, the anxiety that's created from social media and everything. That overthinking is paralyzing. Like it's just paralyzing. So don't overthink. Go with your gut. Trust your instinct. Yeah.
Well, is there, like, you know, a failure or setback for you that, you know, kind of made an impression or something that you really learned or grew from?
I can't think of one big, you know, words matter, you know, so to me, failures are not failures. Setbacks is a good one, or just, of course, I've had many. I'm sure I have a terrible memory, so I don't have one story. I've had many, but I just kind of turn the page when they happen. Sometimes people will remind me, remember when this happened? I'll be like, oh yeah, that happened. That sucked, you know, and I've honestly forgotten it, you know, so I can't think of that many setbacks, but I've had some along the way for sure. I failed a class in nursing school and put me back a whole year where I was like, okay, maybe I need to follow certain rules and not just be always breaking stuff. I need to show up to class. So you learn from that and go, okay, I need to tweak my ways, even though sometimes I like to challenge. I screwed up as a nurse with a patient, like just not listening and really being too by the book about the processes,
Yeah.
doing exactly what I said I wouldn't do.
Right.
Because you do it. Sometimes you get caught in the system and in the day to day, and we're busy and you don't
Yeah.
hear. And even though you hear and your instincts tell you this patient needs me to do this, well, the system tells me to do that, you know? And then later on, I'm like, I should have just listened to my gut, you know?
Right.
So I have quite a few of those things where I go, I could have done that better.
Yeah.
And to me, they're all learning lessons. They're all lessons about, okay.
Yeah.
100%. I love how you talk about listening to your gut, because I think we don't do it enough.
No.
We don't.
We hear it.
We hear it.
Yeah.
We feel it, and we go by the book.
Yeah.
Like we're so used to, that's our programming. It's what we know. But that gut fire, then I always say to my kid, you know, like my kids, you know in your stomach how you're feeling.
Some people
about it.
do, but
Yeah.
I am so surprised at how many people haven't developed that.
That
They either
gut
haven't
feeling.
been given permission to when they were young,
Yeah.
Yeah.
hasn't been instilled in them.
Yeah.
Or, because oftentimes that's my question to staff or whatever.
Yeah.
What is your gut telling you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Honestly, I've had
They
people
don't,
Wow.
they're feeling it. They don't know how
They
to,
don't know
they don't
what
know how
it
to
is.
interpret
No,
what's
but
happening.
they will honestly say, I need you to make the decision for me.
Right.
I'm not going to make
Wow.
the decision for you. I'm going to bounce ideas off for you, but for you to listen to your gut. And
Yeah.
some people are like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because they have always only thought with
In their head.
And, you know, we have heart, gut,
Yeah.
head, and we need to combine all of those at different
Yeah.
times. So I think giving, you know, to answer your question about the kids, getting them to kind of grow that part of them,
Yeah.
to really go, your instinct tells you. And I see my kids do it already, and I'm so proud of them for it. Sometimes
Yeah.
I'll be like, oh, my gut told me not to do this or whatever, and I did it or whatever. And I'm like, oh, so proud of you. Good for you.
Yeah. There's a whole body of work, Keegan and Leahy, their immunity to change model, and they talk about adult development. You know, how we physically and emotionally and mentally develop naturally from infancy till about the age of mid-20s, right? That's going to happen. That growth at all those levels happens without our effort. Is just natural.
Mm-hmm.
And it used to be, the thought was that your mental capacity by the age of by mid-20s, you're done. That's it. Now it's just about learning how to use the gear you have and use it more effectively,
Yeah.
but you're not going to get better gear. Well, they've completely debunked now. All this brain science of the last 10, 15 years has shown, no, actually brain development can continue right till the day you pass if you are active. But what's interesting is they talk about this, most of the population, 70% of the population, never grow beyond what they've got by the age of their mid-20s. So they call that the socialized brain.
That's sad.
It's very sad, right? They never think for themselves. They don't learn to assert who they are. They don't learn, what do I care about? What do I want to do? And so to your point, they're fearful whenever they're in a situation that calls for them to assert themselves, think for themselves, express themselves, make a big decision.
Yeah.
They're going to fall back to, well, how do I belong? How do I fit in?
Yeah.
How do I not stick my neck out?
How do I not get hurt?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are afraid
fear.
to get hurt.
It's fear.
100%.
But you have to get hurt. It's like when people, when their dog passes away,
Yeah.
and you know, they're like, I'm never getting a dog again. That was too painful. Okay, but you had 14 years of fantastic experiences with your
Celebrate
dog.
that.
Right.
You have to have the hurts to be able to get the the joys.
Yeah.
That's again is life, you know, but I think some people either were not taught that, or they were sold like a bad bill of rights, you know,
Right.
like
Yeah.
this life is going to be perfect and life is fair and everything. And that's just not true, you know? So I think managing expectations is a big one too. Do not have expectations about certain things.
Right.
I remember when I met my husband, he has a completely different, childhood than I did, but he would just expect everybody to do the same things as him, and he would get really angry and really frustrated. And I'd be like, dude, why do you care that the person didn't hold the door for you or whatever?
Yeah.
Why do you expect them to?
Yeah.
If they do, it's a nice surprise. He's like, because I would. Okay, but why? Expectations are not a good thing. Like, just expect nothing, and that way everything's a happy surprise.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
We, Eric and I talk a lot about future and where we're going. For you, I'm curious to know, you know, just your journey and where you are now. If you're looking forward, future, and living a rich life, what does that look like for you?
I'm not really a planner long term. I'm more of a
In the
take
moment?
opportunities that come up.
Yeah.
So I would hope that I'm not going to stop that.
Yeah.
That if something comes up that seems interesting,
Yeah.
that I'll go for it, you
Yeah.
know, and that I'll try it. And whether it's, you know, in my quiet time, whether it's my family time or at work, I don't plan on stopping, like, not working for a while. My mom is 70. How old am I? 73, and she still works. She's still a professor at university.
That's
she
amazing.
retired from teaching at the age of 50 and went, what the heck am I going to do? So for 2 years, I think she did nothing, and then she started teaching. She said, I'm going to teach forever. And her students love her, and she's making a difference still, and she's still passionate about it. And she's the youngest of her friends because it keeps her engaged. So I just want to just continue going with the flow kind of thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's still some strategy in that. You place yourself in areas where opportunities can present themselves.
Right. It's like, what's the saying that luck is where preparation meets opportunity? Isn't that how that goes?
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. So making sure that you're in motion. And again, going back to, we've talked a lot about fear on the show today. And I think it's, was it Oprah Winfrey that said we do things out of either love or fear. That's it.
Yeah.
It's either love or fear. And so many of
Oprah.
us are trapped in fear. And certainly your message today and what you're sharing, it resonating with folks that are watching this
be brave.
episode.
Don't be afraid.
Yeah. Core message.
It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
You're most likely not going to catch on fire or start bleeding. Unless you don't put yourself in that situation.
Right. That's not a situation you want to prepare for. As we prepare to wrap up today's episode, reflections on change. Like when you look back on your life story, if you had the option to go back and give your younger self some advice, something to do differently or something to lean into even more deliberately, what advice would you give your younger self?
Maybe just go for it. Enjoy the ride. Obviously, don't be afraid and don't fall into the pattern of don't be afraid to challenge certain patterns. I think when I was young and being a woman, you experience, some discrimination and some things in your life. And when you're younger, you just kind of, even though your gut is telling you something, you just kind of walk away from it.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid to speak up kind of thing for people who are, and to just say, no, that's not okay kind of thing. Obviously it's a different time now, but I think in my younger days, I probably just stepped away from things just because, I didn't want to do the hard thing. And I think doing the hard thing, that would be my big thing to my kids. Do the hard thing. Have the uncomfortable conversations. They are essential.
Yeah.
And actually they will serve you. They will create better connections with people. After the hard conversation, you just delve into a new layer of a relationship or a conversation, or it opens up a bunch of things. And so many people will do everything they can to avoid the hard conversations.
Right.
And really, it's just have it. Do the hard thing. You need to sit down and have the conversation or say what you're feeling. I don't know how many times I see people going around and I'm like, time out. Can we just sit down and talk?
Yeah.
And we talk and it's all settled in I don't know how long. And even if it's you're making me feel like this. Okay, well, let's talk about that.
It's amazing once you have the uncomfortable conversation. We have so much bent up anxiety around it, and it builds and builds and builds. And then if you don't actually have the conversation, it stays with you. And the second you have that conversation, you're like, oh, I wish I had just done this early. We waste so much
It's
energy.
like procrastination, right?
Yeah.
Procrastinating is wing. And once you actually do it, that only took me 10 minutes. And I've been thinking about it for 30 days or whatever,
Right.
Amazing.
It's again, get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
100%.
Do the hard thing. That's how you become stronger.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
And resilient, that's how you bounce back from stuff.
Right.
And I would say to apologize and forgive and repair.
Let go.
Just don't dwell. If you screw up, just say, oh my God, I'm sorry. I didn't know. Really apologize.
Yeah.
But don't say, but if you would have done that differently, I wouldn't have done that, because that's not a real apology.
No, anytime the word but is used in an apology, it doesn't everything that came in front of it, right?
Life is too short to hold on to conversations and things that don't matter.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up the show, we have one final question we always like to end with. It's an easy one, don't worry. What does living richly mean to you?
I think it just means taking the journey and discovering who you are completely, and really, pushing yourself, growing, constantly growing. And, I don't mean that in a stressful way. Some people are like, oh, what's wrong? I had a friend once tell me, what's wrong with just being, just staying. And I was like, what? You don't want to learn new things. You don't want to do that kind of thing.
Right.
But I get that. Like there's seasons that we need to just chill, you know.
Yeah.
And I went through a really hard year last year, hardest of my entire life.
Yeah.
And I don't think I grew. Obviously I grew in different ways, but I didn't purposely go out and do some, you know, self-reflection and stuff like that. I just kind of survived.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I don't mean all the time, but generally living richly, I think, is doing more of what you love and pushing yourself to figure out what that is.
Yeah, love that. Thank you so much for being on the show, Sophie.
Thanks.
I had already so much respect for you, and now hearing more of your story, that's just gone up several notches.
Ditto.
And,
I really enjoy the podcast. It's really kind of put it on in the morning when I'm getting ready. And
we love to hear that.
It's self-care. That's self-care.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for being here. To our listeners, thank you for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed the conversation. I know many of you will be inspired and have been inspired by Sophie's story. As we always encourage you to do, help us get the message out. If you're enjoying the show and it's of help to you, then like, share, subscribe. As Wendy likes to say, sharing is caring. So help us get the word out. And make sure to visit our website, livingrichlly.me, livingrichlly.me. It'll be there on your screen. Easy to see. Two big things you're going to find on the website. One is how to join our new Facebook group. This is a private group that's just been exploding on Facebook. There's member-only content on there. You get to unpack and see previews of things that are coming. And it's been amazing to watch the community forming there. And you can also sign up for our upcoming 15-day Life Vision Challenge, an experience designed to help you kind of get clear on who you are and what you want to do with your life. So, folks, visit the website, share, like, and subscribe. Once again, thanks for tuning in. And until we see you next week, get out there and live your best life.